Hello, my name is Matt Leonhardt, and this is the sacred site of Uluru and the Anangu people who worship it. Uluru is a monolith in central Australia. It is one of the many beautiful sites that give Australia the unique landscape it is famous for. Uluru is entirely made out of sandstone, making the rock itself completely devoid of plants. However, the shape of the rock has enabled springs and caves to develop as rain runs off the sandstone. The springs have allowed vegetation to grow around the rock and has historically provided life to the animals and the native tribes of the area. It is about 3.5 football fields wide and 9.4 kilometers tall. During sunrises and sunsets, the sandstone of the monolith grows a beautiful red color. It is part of the Uluru Kata Tjuta National Park, with Kata Tjuta referring to a neighboring sandstone mountain. While as a national park there's government influence, the Anangu people are considered to be the true owners and protectors of the area, but I'll talk more about this complex relationship later. For now, I'll go more into depth about the indigenous people of Australia and the area around Uluru. The natives to Australia are called the Aboriginals. They were the people that lived here before there was any European influence. They are the oldest known culture to exist, dating back to over 60,000 years ago. The Aboriginals that live in Central Australia and particularly the Western Desert are called the Anangu. The Anangu that live in the area around Uluru descended from the Pete Jat Jat Jata and the Yankunit Jat Jata, different tribes with different dialects that are equally hard to pronounce. They still live in very small communities, with the largest in the area called Mutit Julu, with only 300 people living there. Some often interact with the neighboring towns that are more tourist influenced and house non-Indigenous Australians. Aboriginal beliefs vary depending on their region. However, they follow a similar way of life and generally keep their culture independent from outsiders. While they enjoy interacting with these outsiders and sharing some of their culture, they keep many of their rituals a secret. Their way of life is called Jakurpa. This term includes everything the Aboriginals hold themselves to believing, how they organize their society, and how they hold their morals. Most parts of Jakurpa are not written down, but merely passed down through generations, often through storytelling. Children are taught these stories at a young age, and at age 10, boys are officially initiated into the tribe through a ceremony. The initiation ceremony is one of the two most important ceremonies a person receives, with the other being their funeral. The funeral ceremonies vary from tribe to tribe. However, it is commonly thought that the ceremonies are performed to help guide the spirit of the deceased to the afterlife. Otherwise, the spirit will not be at peace and may cause harm to the tribe. The stories the Aboriginals tell often give a life lesson to those who listen. Stories can be interpreted to different meanings that can apply to people of all ages and circumstances. The Aboriginals were originally nomads who hunted and gathered for food. This, however, is one of the few influences from the rest of the world, as they now live in settled communities. Hunting is still a very important part of their culture today. The Aboriginals believe that their direct ancestors are spirits that taught them about Jakurpa, including the importance of hunting. They see it as a form of respect to their ancestors to still practice traditional hunting. This has led the Australian government to give exceptions in their hunting laws to enable Aboriginals to continue this tradition. The same ancestors that taught these people about Jakurpa were considered to be the same that created the land they live in. It is thought that the land was created during a time called the Dream Time. Many of the stories the Aboriginals tell is based around the Dream Time. The Dream Time was a time where the land in Australia was completely empty and featureless. Spirits consider their ancestors emerged and roamed the area, creating these features such as mountains, lakes, trees, and rivers. The features that are there today are evidence of the land that the spirits cultivated. The way these spirits were thought to change the land was through their travels across the land, which Aboriginals called the Awara. The spirits also created the first animals and tribes during this time. The Dream Time is the creation of the landscape of the area and the beginning of civilization. The spirits set up the civilizations under Jakurpa, which was passed down for generations. The spirits now reside in these natural features and the animals of the area. The spirits also reside in the atmosphere, are able to control the weather, and make up the stars and celestial bodies at night. Some animals in particular that are thought to be connected to spirits in the Anangu society are the Malajakurpa, or the hair wallaby, the Kalaya, or emu, the Liru, a poisonous snake, the Lunkata, a blue-tongued lizard, the Lunpa, or the kingfisher, and the Tikinterjinchirpa, or the woolly wagtail. These are all animals that can be found in and around Uluru. I will now share an Aboriginal folk story centered around the Dreamtime called the Rainbow Serpent. It depicts spirit of the time as animals. Many Aboriginals, especially those in the north of Australia and north of the Anangu, believe that the most powerful spirits were snakes. While it was not confirmed that the story comes from this region, the Rainbow Serpent is depicted as stronger than the other spirits. So here is the story of the Rainbow Serpent. At the beginning of the Dreamtime, the earth was flat and dry and empty. There were no trees, no rivers, no animals, and no grass. It was a dry and flat land. One day, Guriala, the Rainbow Serpent, woke from his sleep and set off to find his tribe. He crossed Australia from east to west and north to south, stopping to listen for his people. He crossed every part of the dry, flat Australia, but found nothing. After searching for a long time, he grew tired and lay down to sleep. The land he lay down to sleep on was not the same as the land he had set out to search for his people on, though. As he had looked for his people, his big, long body had cut great gouges into the land. Guriala lay in the sand all alone until he decided to create more life in the world. He called, "Frogs, come out," and the frogs rose out of the ground with their bellies full of the water they stored. He tickled the frogs until the water burst from their mouth and filled the gouges of the land. These gouges made the rivers and streams we see today. As the water flowed over the land, grass and trees began to grow and fill the land with color. Now that there was grass to eat and water to drink, Guriala woke the animals. The kookaburra laughed. The goanna walked, and the wombat climbed out of her burrow, all for the first time. Some animals lived in the sea, swimming back and forward. Some animals lived in the sky, flying with their friends to distant places. Some animals lived on the land, digging and playing in the sand. They were happy and gathered food and water to bring back to their own tribes. The Rainbow Serpent made rules that all the animals had to obey. He said, "All animals that obey the rules will be rewarded by becoming humans. The animals that disobey the rules will be punished. Some animals followed the rules and were rewarded by being turned into humans. Other animals disobeyed the rules and were turned into the stone that makes the mountains." One day it started to rain, and it rained like it had never rained before. Rain fell for days and days, and the world was becoming flooded with water. Two young men, Bilbil, or the Rainbow Lorikeet brothers, had no shelter, and they came to the Rainbow Serpent. They asked for help sheltering from the rain. The Rainbow Serpent was hungry and tricked the young men. "I have no shelter, but you can hide in my mouth. You'll be safe from the rain in there." The young man climbed into Guriala's mouth, and he closed it shut, swallowing both men. He soon realized that the people would notice that the young men missing, and he'd come to look for them. He knew that they would find their track leading right to his mouth. He didn't want to be caught, so he decided to hide in the only place he knew he would be safe, the sky. He hid in the sky away from the people chasing him, and he saw their sadness at losing these two young men. He decided to try and make them happy again, so he turned his body into a big arc of beautiful colors. Now every time, just after it rains, you can see the Rainbow Serpent sharing his beautiful colors with the people on the ground as his way of saying sorry for taking those Rainbow Lorikeet brothers. I think this is a good example of a story used to teach lessons. The biggest takeaway I had from reading this story is that whenever you do something wrong, it matters even more what you do after your wrongdoing to make amends. Even though the spirits never forgave the Rainbow Serpent, He was able to make the world better despite his mistake by sharing his beauty with the world. It shows that the spirits also have empathy as well. The rainbow spirit knew that he should have never killed the innocent, and he was willing to sacrifice himself in order to leave a positive impact on the world. It depicts these spirits as powerful, but fair in terms of how they treat their land and their people. If the people of Australia treat these spirits with the respect that they ask, then in return these spirits will continue to share their gifts with the world, just as the rainbow spirit made humans of those that listen to him. Here are a couple of maps of Uluru and the area around it. The left map shows a top view of the rock and the sacred areas around it. In Uluru Katajuta National Park, there are over 40 sacred sites to the Anangu and 11 dreaming trails that contain various ceremonial sites and burial grounds. Some of the sites that I will be talking about later in the presentation are circled in the map. Malaputa, Kanju Gorge, Wayuki, Juku Japi in the northwest, Mutijulu in the south, and Tapuji and Kuniyapiti in the east. Uluru is located where the rectangular symbol is on the map. It is in the eastern section of the deserts that are located in the western half of Australia, and it is located in the northern sector of the country, despite it being directly in the center. As you can see, the region Uluru is in is sandy and dry, but you can see that there's still some green in the area. Uluru helps the rainwater in the area by running off of the rock and building up around the sides, allowing for greens to grow and a more diverse ecosystem to survive. One other thing to note is that the top view shot of the rock shows no greens on the rock itself, as noted earlier. Uluru is considered a cultural, societal, and environmental center for the region. There are many reasons why the Anangu worship the monolith. First, some of the spirits that created the land are thought to now reside in Uluru. By worshiping and paying respect to it, the Anangu believe they are pleasing the spirits. Also, Uluru is sacred because of the way the Dreamtime stories are told, with a big focus around the natural features of the land and the ancestors' travel that created them. Uluru's incredible size makes it evidence of these powerful beings giving their gifts to the land. Along with that, Aboriginal culture is linked very much with nature. The fact that Uluru creates a hospitable environment through their spirits and subsequent greens that have grown makes the Anangu people appreciate the nurturing ability that the monolith offers to their people and the animals that are important to their culture as well. In a literal sense as well, the Anangu believe the spiritual ancestors themselves decided on Uluru as a sacred place and taught the Anangu where and how to worship it. In the caves in the area considered areas of worship, there are many paintings depicting Anangu culture and spiritual creatures, including one pictured on the right. These are often used to teach children before they are initiated. An Anangu story describes the creation of Uluru as unique from other natural forces. The story tells of two tribes of ancestors being invited to another tribe's feast, but on the way to the feast, the two tribes got distracted by a watering hole and by creatures described as sleepy lizard women. This led to them being late, and the host tribe grew furious. They then sang an evil song that turned a mud sculpture into a live dingo. There is a myth that dingo often kidnap children. Instead, this dingo started killing members of each tribe until a battle broke out. This led to heavy casualties, and eventually the ground rose from beneath their feet into the sky, creating Uluru. I will now talk more about the sacred sites around Uluru. The Mutijulu Waterhole is the destination of a popular trail called the Kuniya Walk. It is one of the most lush areas around the park. Famous figures who visit the park are often given personal tours of the walk by the Anangu. The walk is connected with Anangu culture as it surrounds a story involving a battle between a Kuniya, a Woma python woman spirit, and a Liru, a poisonous brown snake man spirit. The Kunia avenged her family members who were killed by a group of Liru, using magic to overpower them. There are still holes and cracks in the stone that are still apparent today from the battle. The Kulpi Mutajulu is a common campsite for the Anangu for generations. During the day, men would go for hunts in the area, and women and children would collect mai, or berries and other bush fruits. At night, the families would gather around the campfire and tell stories. It is a place of significance for Anangu families. The Kanju Gorge is a popular tourist spot. It shows a beautiful cutout of the rock as it extends into the skyline. It is a common place where visitors camp. It also contains a waterfall and a spring that allow for many plants to grow. The remaining spots are particularly sacred locations of the park. These are Tapuchi, which is an ancient hunter-gatherer location. It is the origin of many Dreamtime stories. These stories are often told when the Anangu travel here. Jogjapi, Pulari, and Malaputa are especially sacred for women. They contain rock carvings and other drawings that display important symbols for Anangu women. These carvings are considered on the same level of religious texts of other belief systems. Warayuki is a close cave to Jogjapi. It is particularly sacred to men and contains cave paintings. Many initiation ceremonies are done in this cave. Kunia Piti is another site with many rock carvings. It is thought that the Kunia in the story of the Kunia and Liru laid her eggs here. Legend has it that she took her eggs with her around her neck like a necklace to face the Liru. The path she created from here to the Mutajulu waterhole is now known as Kunia Path. In the sensitive areas, tourists are often told that they cannot take pictures out of respect as well. Having all these sacred sites at a national park can be problematic. There are a few issues that have arose from the situation that I will now talk about. The first non-Indigenous person to reach Uluru was William Goss of the South Australian government. He claimed the territory for his country, naming the rock Ayers Rock in 1873 after the current Secretary of the government of the time, Sir Henry Ayers. To this day, this is commonly what the rock is called along with Uluru. The government has always had influence on the area ever since, claiming ownership to the rock. In 1958, the area was named the Uluru Katajutu National Park. Having all these visitors often led to many impeding on sacred areas, despite the park's owners discouraging it. The government finally decided in 1985 to officially give the land back to the Anangu, but on the condition that the park remains open. They see the Anangu as the official protectors of the area, but there are still many non-Indigenous Australians employed at the park. Despite being granted the area again, not much has changed, especially visitors climbing on the rock. Despite it not being illegal, the Anangu see it as disrespectful to climb the rock, especially when some areas require climbing gear that digs into the rock. The amount of tourists that climb the rock declined. However, in 2016, it was estimated that 1/5 of visitors made at least some attempt to climb a part of the monolith. The Anangu continued to petition the government for more protection on their wishes, and the government finally agreed. In 2019, it will finally be illegal to climb Uluru, a huge step towards actually giving the land back to the original owners. Here are a few reasons why I decided to choose Uluru as my sacred site. First, I knew nothing about the native Australians. I did not realize that like Native Americans, they lived by a unique folk culture centered around their belief system. I also have never been to Australia. It has always been one of the places I have most wanted to travel to. Their landscape is so different from any other country, and I would love to see it firsthand. In school, I have always been intrigued when learning about folk cultures that involve spirits, rituals, and worshiping animals. The Aboriginal culture is especially intriguing because there are so many animals that are exclusive to the area. Lastly, when I was researching sacred sites that I could do my project on, Uluru struck my curiosity because the situation surrounding the area is so unique. The natural beauty of Uluru should be shared by everyone, but these visitors must respect the rituals and beliefs of the desired owners of the area. Luckily, it looks like the government is taking the right steps to allow this to happen. Here is what I learned from this project. First of all, I didn't know who the Aboriginals were in the first place. I'm glad I took on the challenge of learning about a new culture and belief system, along with the challenge of pronouncing all these names. I also learned a better understanding of folk culture. The textbook often talks about how folk culture has dispersed as globalization and popular culture has emerged. It also talks about how globalization enables cultures to intermix. However, this can cause traditional culture to be blurred, as the pressures of modern times have caused some members of folk cultures to conform. While the Aboriginals have adapted to become more modern, they still follow Jakurpa. It is important to allow these cultures to maintain as these pressures continue. Allowing the Anangu to live in peace is the only way to maintain the history and cultural appeal behind the amazing monolith that is Uluru. And lastly, here are my credits. Thank you for listening.